what Israel did, so first of all, let's be clear. They didn't attack the leader of Hamas or the leader of Hezbollah. They attacked a field commander of Hezbollah in Lebanon, the same field commander who was in charge of the rocket launches that killed the 12 youth in northern Israel. And they killed a political leader of Hamas. And Hamas has both political and revolutionary wings. Right? So we've got to be specific, because when you think about the fact that they went and they killed people in sovereign states, meaning they launched an attack into the sovereign state of Iran, into the capital of Iran, Tehran, to kill a political leader of Hamas who was in Iran as a guest. The primary financier, the primary backer for Hamas is Iran.
Yes.
Right? Iran funds Hamas. Iran funds Hezbollah. Iran funds the Houthis in Yemen. Iran is the chief bank for all the people that surround Israel, all the enemies that surround Israel. So they've got Hamas fighting out of Gaza, which is essentially on the west coast of Israel. They've got Lebanon hosting Hezbollah. That's the northern side of Israel. And then they've got Iran itself that sits on the western or the eastern side of Israel. And then they've got the Houthis that are south of Israel. So what Israel just did is in basically 72 hours, they launched an attack that gave all four of their geographical areas, all enemies who sit on all four fronts, plausible reason to come back and attack. It was a stupid decision. But it goes to show that Israel is so confident that if somebody starts to attack Israel, if Iran attacks Israel, they're that confident the United States is going to come in and help. So what Netanyahu's really doing is he's prolonging the conflict, right? He can't win against Hamas. So he's going to prolong the conflict by expanding it against not just Hezbollah, but against Iran, because he knows that the one way he's going to be able to lock in American support independent of the president is if he's fighting against Iran.
He's also coming to our Congress, though, at a time, and speaking in front of them, I guess that was 2 weeks ago, something like that, at a time where he is also in political turmoil.
For sure.
And one thing, listen, you say what you want about Netanyahu. One thing about the guy I do have to compliment him on, he's an unbelievable politician. I mean, the guy's the cockroach that never dies. He has effectively had his hands towards the top or on top of power there for most of the last 30 years. And he knows, I don't remember exactly the breakdown of how some of the elections will happen there, so I don't want to speak out of my ass, but he knows that the approval rating is low given the ongoing war. He's supposedly the wartime leader right now, but the PR campaign of that has failed.
Right.
And he also still has the same problem that, to your point, that he was hitting us with in 2002 in front of Congress when he's like, you have to go to Iraq and you have to go to Iran as well. What is good for Israel is good for the United States. And it's like, when he came back here last week, I heard the same thing minus Iraq because that one's done.
Right.
And it feels to me like, and I understand where Israel's coming from on this, they're very worried about Iran. Fine. I would be worried about that too if I were a nation of 9 million people and they were right next to me and had death to Israel as their slogan. But they want us to come take care of it when they have the highest trained military in the world. So, it feels like we're getting dragged into another endless war. My question is, am I too worried about an endless war in the sense that I've seen the ones go wrong, like Iraq and Afghanistan, to the point that I risk being isolationist because Iran really is that big of a problem?
Iran is that big of a problem in the Middle East. They're not that big of a problem when you look at them globally. Iran's influence outside of, anywhere further beyond, say, Turkey, Iran's influence doesn't really exist much. Iran doesn't have much influence in Europe, Latin America, the Caribbean, North America. Their influence in Asia is limited, right? And that's fine, because what Iran is trying to build is something known as the Shia Crescent.
Shia Crescent?
The Shia Crescent. That's been their revolutionary goal since the 1950s. They're trying to build a series of Shia countries, meaning Shia majority countries, that extend from as far north as Iraq all the way down and around through Yemen, right? So in the crescent shape. That's their sphere of influence. And their primary opponent is Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is trying to secure a Sunni establishment all throughout the Khaliji which is the oil-rich countries. So the conflict in the Middle East doesn't even really include the United States. It's a Sunni Shia conflict to see which sect of Islam becomes the dominant sect in charge of both governments and social political purposes. So that's the real conflict. The United States is really only part of it because we need the oil from the region. Without the oil, and the oil-rich states are largely Sunni-driven states. So we partnered with Sunni states like Bahrain and Qatar and UAE and Saudi Arabia. So that's what our interest is in that region. But because the oil from that region goes everywhere, everybody's interested in to a certain extent. Where Iran folds into that, because Iran has oil, but they're not an oil-rich country. The reason Iran plays such a role is because Iran is the breadbasket for all of the Middle East. The rest of the Middle East is fucking desert. Yeah. They have dates and coffee. And the coffee they import from Africa, right? So what Iran has is agriculture, and they have a history of culture and art and technology and industry. That is what put the rest of the Khaliji world on the map. So even when you're sitting in Saudi or sitting in UAE, and you hear the national people, the citizens of those countries, talk about Iran as an enemy, they go to the grocery store and everything on their shelf is coming from Iran. Oh, so it's all fucked up because politically they disagree with them because they're Shia and they're fundamentalists, et cetera, et cetera. But pragmatically, they have to play games. They have to play nice because there's no fresher, cheaper, better built logistical supply chain than the food that comes from Iran. And Iran knows that. The reason Iran can't successfully be sanctioned and the reason that Iran is so difficult to tame is because its primary forms of income and business have very little to do with what the United States can touch, what the Western world can touch, because most of their partnerships are with the Middle East. And the Middle East knows they're not going to, cut off their toes to spite their foot. And that's what would happen if you really sanctioned Iran.
Freedom! So fresh, son. Freedom!